I mean, we're going to do this. Are internment camps being built by the government? It's an article today from WND. Jerome Corsi is a legitimate author. The contracts have been let. What are these camps going to be used for? Let's ask the author, Jerome Corsi from WorldNet Daily. Welcome to the Savage Nation. So, look, you're not saying that they're going to inter Americans, are you?
Well, Michael, they very well could. I mean, it's a contract with this KBR, which is a former engineering and construction subsidiary of Halliburton, and the contract calls for KBR to build emergency detention facilities whenever the Department of Homeland Security says they're needed. That could
have any of these facilities yet been built?
No, they've not yet been. It's a contingency contract, and they'll be built only when the emergencies are declared. But the
how in the world? How can they build them overnight, Jerome?
The emergencies could be any kind of emergency, and they could say, get the detention centers up and get them up now.
How could they do that, though? You mean the government could build them overnight?
Well, whether they're overnight, Michael, they don't want to have them, I'm sure, up and around for everybody to see in advance. If we have a crisis or an emergency were anticipated, I'm sure the order would go out and they'd start being built. The emergencies that they could be built for are not only immigration emergencies, and I think we have one of those right now, but they can apply to natural emergencies or natural disasters, or even to the kinds of very general presidential determinations of national emergencies, such as these two very frightening Homeland Security and National Security presidential directives that were signed on May 9th by President Bush, which basically gives him the power to declare an emergency of any kind and then assume virtually dictatorial powers in the office of the government. And,
that occurred over the weekend, didn't it, or shortly around that time?
It was on May 9th. It was just posted on the White House website with no statement or no comment and very little press notice.
Wait a minute, Jerome, how could the president write himself virtual dictatorial powers?
It's remarkable, but he did. This directive, which came, a stroke of the pen, and these directives went into effect May 9th, and they specify that if the president himself declares a national emergency, the president can take under his office all federal, state, local, territorial, and even tribal governments, as well as operate private sector organizations the president thinks affects the operation of government. So George Bush could say, look, we've got a national emergency here, a flu epidemic, a natural disaster, terror attack, whatever, and I'm in charge. I'm in charge of everything. And there's no limit on what I might order that we could do.
All right. Does the power that he granted himself exceed that of FDR during World War II? Would you know that?
I think so. I think this is the broadest definition of emergency powers I've ever read. It differs from the National Emergency Act, which we have in effect. That's U.S. Code Title 50. But the National Emergency Act says the president has to go to Congress immediately with a national emergency declaration. And Congress
how could he? Wait a minute. How could we, in a democracy, how could he do this? I don't understand that part of it.
Michael, he just did it. He just said, okay, I'm the decider. It's going to be a lot easier if I'm a dictator. These powers allow me to be dictator.
So how would he be any different than Hugo Chavez?
Well, it'd be basically the same. President Bush would say an emergency exists.
All right, so he could close down any radio station, any radio network, any TV network he doesn't like, who might be disseminating, let's say, anti-American propaganda in his mind. He could even arrest broadcasters, couldn't he?
He could shut down broadcasts. He could declare martial law. He could arrest people. He could.
Oh, wait. Jerome, I know this is true because I've seen it over and over again. Why are we not hearing an outcry, for example, from the Democrats? Is it because they know they're going to be in power in 2 years and they want that power?
The Democrats should be objecting to this. I've been saying that these secretive motions by President Bush, including the Security and Prosperity Partnership in North America, it seems that the Republicans and the Democrats are on the same side in opening our borders. They're both paid by the same multinational corporations. And now the Democrats aren't even objecting to when Bush writes himself a national security and homeland security directive that gives him virtually dictatorial powers once he declares an emergency exists.
Who do you think he'll put in the camps? Let's take the worst case scenario, go paranoid on me. A dirty nuke goes off. Who goes in the camps, the Islamo-fascists or some other component of the population?
Michael, as critical as I've been writing about President Bush, I think I'd be including myself as one of the first to go. I think,
Where, into one of the internment camps?
Yeah, I'm getting my internment camp uniform ready and getting, study of the concentration camps.
Now, if you tell me if I see another article in the near future that they're printing signs up that say work makes you free, I'm really leaving the country.
Michael, the worst thing about these is I link to the National Security and Homeland Security Directive on the website of the White House. It's there. I link to the Wall Street, to the Dow Jones report of the contract that KBR got to build these detention.
Oh, you actually show the contract. But is KBR embossing signs that say Arbeit macht frei in various languages or not?
They won't admit to that. I don't think so, but I talked to their directors.
Any Zyklon B? They're not ordering Zyklon B or a derivative thereof from a subsidiary of Halliburton, I hope?
Michael, it's certainly what it makes you think. I mean, Auschwitz flashed across my mind as soon as I read the KBR contract announced.
Wait, come on. Look, we're right-wingers, and so we tend towards extremism according to the reasonable people in the middle, such as the leprechaun. But why is the left not worried about this? This is just exactly what they're worried about, isn't it? How come they haven't noticed his power grab in the building of the camps, Jerome?
This is one I think the left and those of us who care about the Constitution should really be joining forces to say that it's fundamentally against the Constitution for the president and executive to say all power resides in me. I mean,
so it's not all power to the people; it's all power to the president. I'm speaking with Jerome Corsi. He's written an article about the building of internment camps. The contracts have been let to a subsidiary of Halliburton, and yet we don't hear about this anywhere except on WorldNet Daily, which I've linked up on michaelsavage.com. Questions for Jerome, 1-800-449-8255. Be here. Well, the Savage Nation phone lines are clogged. The website is being swamped. I can't even get on michaelsavage.com. And as predicted, as I say, I want to back off again. This is not a war of the worlds. I didn't say that they're building internment camps and they're going to put you in there. On the other hand, we don't know why they're building internment camps and who will be put in there. So it's a worthy topic for talk radio. And as usual, being the tip of the arrow in the media, we're dealing with it first. But I can guarantee you as I sit here, it will be on Fox News within a week or on CNN. I mean, I covered the Knoxville hate crime story weeks and weeks ago, and I'm glad to see that CNN picked it up. That's the way it should work. Sometimes we get stories from them, and sometimes we get them from the Internet, as we did now. But it's real. We're not making it up. Jerome Corsi, you have the data that Jerome, you have on your website, WND, you actually link to the contracts, right?
That's right. We show the Dow Jones report of the contract, so you can see that it's fully reported. Just, the press ignored it. It was not picked up, this KBR. It's a former Halliburton.
Wait, the Democrats attacked Bush for everything under the sun. How could a whack job like Bernie Sanders, for example, let this go when he's a socialist who hates this administration? Can you explain that to me?
Switcher, they don't want to point out that Clinton probably did it too. I mean, that's the problem. But
you mean Clinton had this power?
Well, these specific contracts go back to 2000. So these are Bush contracts, and I didn't research the Clinton contracts. I just found the Bush contracts, but that might be one explanation. What I know is Bush has got the contract with KBR to build detention facilities for any kind of emergency that Bush declares, including a national...
Let's go to Jerome. Let's see what the Savage Nation thinks. Let's take their calls and see what they think about this, okay? Who shall I go with, guys? Who's the best caller out there? Who's number one? Derek. I don't know where he is, but Derek. Derek, on line 7, welcome to the Savage Nation. Question.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Corsi, considering that some terrorism experts and investigative journalists such as Joseph Farah, founder of WorldNet Daily, and Paul Williams believe that a nuclear terrorist attack on the United States and multiple cities is imminent, do you believe that this is part of the administration's reasoning behind this move to set up internment camps?
It could well be, but, the Homeland Security and National Security Directive signed on May 9th is so broadly written, it could apply to any kind of an emergency, avian flu scare, another Katrina, a Tonkin Bay type incident. Who knows what it could apply to?
I read your article, Jerome, and it says that it can actually take over private businesses. Isn't that odd?
The all the powers were moved into the office of the presidency in a declaration of emergency, take over private business, take over even tribal and territorial governments. It extends...
Wait, why do you suppose that the tribal thing was added? What was that all about? Why would he take control of reservations as well? What, for fear that people he was looking for would run there?
I guess it's just, we're going to grab power, grab it all. And, the casinos are there, let's grab everything. There was no exclusion here. Territorial, tribal, state, local.
Now, you have no evidence that he's building the placards that say Arbeit macht frei in English or in German. You don't have any evidence that he's hired Idi Amin or any of his descendants as consultants on human barbecuing.
Everything I've published in WorldNet Daily, I can link to the original sources that fully document the claims.
At a certain point, I become kind of cynical about all of this. But on the other hand, we're living in such crazy times, you don't know what to believe.